Hi there. My name is Tiffany Rouskulp, and I am presenting on trellising WAC, growing a sustainable WAC program upon institutional power lines. I am a professor in the English department at Salt Lake Community College, and I am the director of our Writing Across the College program. When the WAC program started out at SLCC, it started out as a request for a traditional WAC program with like writing intensive courses and faculty workshops and co-requisite learning communities and the such. Okay, let me go to the next slide. But I resisted that framework because it had already failed in the past 2 decades twice, and the success of WAC and WID programs at two-year colleges is not inspiring. It's pretty rough to get a program off the ground and sustainable there. Also, I had the affordances to resist this from my time spent as the founding director of the Community Writing Center. So I drew on my work from community literacy and building to rename the program Writing Across the College that would focus on the entire community of writers at the college, not simply students. I'm sharing right here this image of this cycle that Cox, Galen, and Melsner presented in their 2018 book, Sustainable WAC, as it has become the go-to figure to represent the stages of WAC program development, and it is a useful reference point. I'll discuss here briefly the progression of the SLCC WAC program and where it aligns with and diverges from this cycle. So in our first year, over here, our main job was to understand the culture of writing at the college, as it should be for anywhere, but not just for students. Many WAC scholars have written about the necessity of focusing on the writing culture at every stage in WAC development. But from my work at the Community Writing Center, I knew that we could not separate out student writing and be successful. So we had to look at more than just the student culture of writing. As I wrote in a recent chapter, to change a culture of writing at a given institution or locale, however, I believe that all stakeholders must have a connection to it. The writing culture of Salt Lake Community College lives within student writing and learning experiences. It also resides within staff members' job tasks and emails, in faculty drafts of syllabi and sabbatical applications, and within administrators' reports and requests for proposal. If the object of WAC work is solely student writing, faculty, staff, and administrators do not have to empathize with, relate to, or face the cognitive, social, and emotional work that goes into writing. Neither their own or by extension student writing. How can a true culture of writing be built when those who hold the social capital and discursive power within that culture do not see themselves as belonging to it? So that year we did a lot of talking, interviewing and researching and so on. We made very loose plans, referring back over here to this figure, for what we could provide, and then spent the next 2 years jumping into every opportunity that remotely resembled writing support at the college in all areas. In this phase, which diverges from this cycle, we notably did not work towards the original request for writing intensive or co-requisite programming or faculty workshops in any significant way. Support for student writing took the form of collaborative statements about writing expectations and a grammar hotline, and a searchable online collection of student work. Most of our efforts were frankly focused on staff writing and faculty writing needs and institutional assessment requests. We also got involved in guided self-placement for composition courses when we were requested to do so. Where we were needed, we went. This approach mimicked the development of the Community Writing Center, in which we let the community and the networks we made there to determine what our priorities would be, rather than coming in with a predetermined notion of what the center would ultimately look like, though we always did this within boundaries of what we knew our resources would allow us to provide. Oops, hold on, I went too far. Let me go back, sorry. In the next phase, we had to deal with a spiteful administrator whose interim status as dean put the program in jeopardy. He demanded a program review because he thought the WAC program was not worth the funding it received. The funding was 80% reassigned time for me and about $3,000 to play with. We spent the year doing the program review and sent it on up the line to the provost and the president, who were struck by the breadth of WAC offerings that had spread out across the power lines already in place at the college. We had established the program as an important resource for multiple stakeholders at the college, And instead of the distinct steps of planning, developing, and leading, the WAC program merged these together into a continually moving process, including understanding for each partnership or collaboration that we engaged with. By the end of the program review, we restructured into our current framework, which you can see here. So the Writing Across the College program has two distinct arms or legs. One is writing in the classroom that you can see here, and one is the professional writing center. In the writing in the classroom, we have student support, we have teaching support, we have a writing intensive program, and we have writing assessment. With the professional writing center, we offer individual consulting, we do workshops, and we support scholarship for staff and faculty, and we maintain a style guide for the entire institution. We are only just now, in the past year and a half, getting into the writing intensive program and into some of the more specific and formed writing or teaching writing workshops. And we have a transparency in writing assignments initiative that more directly address student writing. It's up until this point that we spent time developing programs based on the institutional power lines that helped us get to the point that we could offer this support and have it taken up by faculty and administrators. So what I'd like to focus on are two of the primary power lines that we tapped into to establish the WAC program as necessary for the success of students at the college. So we focused on writing assessment and also faculty evaluation. So first, writing assessment. So since 2017, the WAC program has been responsible for the institutional-wide assessment of the effective communication general education student learning outcome. This and other gen ed outcomes have been assessed through an e-portfolio system for about 7 years, and the college is fully committed to using e-portfolios this way. When WAC joined the project, the assessment process used the AAC&U written communication rubric to randomly assess a selection of student writing. This 30,000-foot view of assessment provided very little useful information in terms of how our students were developing as writers. But for 3 years, we stayed in our lane and tweaked the process slightly to quantify the types of genres students wrote across gen ed designations and examine a few of the more stable genres for identifiable futures. After 3 years, however, we'd established ourselves enough that we proposed a different assessment based on the faculty assignments themselves, examining them for transparency and adherence to WPA guidelines for student writing outcomes. This 2-year study assessed nearly 70 assignments from across the college and then invited faculty to revise their assignments. The impact on student performance was slight but positive, with gains in faculty assessments and significant qualitative increase in the student learning experience according to faculty reports. With this accomplishment in hand, the WAC program is now in talks with the Provost's Office and the Faculty Senate to make changes to the institutional-wide assessment process, specifically changing the college's student learning outcome to remove a requirement of standard usage and correctness, and to develop a more equitable, effective communication outcome language. Further, a large transparency and assignments initiative spearheaded by WAC has been taken up by the Associate Dean for General Education, the e-learning instructional support program as well. Next, one of the largest power lines that the WAC grew upon has been the faculty evaluation process. Around 2016, the evaluation process changed to require a professional portfolio as part of all faculty annual evaluation, tenure applications, and post-tenure review processes. No support system was provided to faculty, however, and WAC saw an opening. WAC collaborated with academic administrators to create portfolio expectations and then partnered with the ePortfolio program to facilitate multiple workshops and online resources for faculty. Over the past, however many years that is, 4 or 5 years, the WAC program has become the de facto expert on the faculty portfolio for the evaluation process. I provide dozens of individual consults to faculty each year, in addition to ongoing workshops and online courses. And each exchange that I have with individuals gives me the opportunity to ask faculty to reflect on how they feel about their own writing. on all that involves, their uncertainty and their vulnerability that comes with it. This then offers an opening to talk about their students' writing and how they think students experience it. More often than not, a recognition of shared experience happens and the faculty softens somewhat in their attitude towards students. This seems like a small thing, but I really don't believe it is. The faculty I work with more frequently attend or participate in the workshops I provide for using writing in the classroom and take up the materials and resources that are offered to them. They do this more frequently than those who I don't work with individually, those who have not reached out to me. Working with faculty individually has led on their own writing, has led to a mutually supportive relationship and appreciation for each other's work and expertise. So what I have noticed is that faculty do not see me and the WAC program as something external to their work, but something that supports their work. So I believe that these positive developments happen more quickly than without faculty having to authentically confront their own writing experiences and identities. In many WAC workshops, faculty will be asked to talk about their own writing experiences, but they're not actually necessarily in a situation in which their own writing is being evaluated by an external source. In this case, their supervisors in the college and provost and president and all that. So putting them into this authentic and materially bound writing situation, I think allows them to experience what students are experiencing every day in their classes, and it just opens them up to a bit more compassion and a bit more acceptance of the learning trends or the development of student writing. And this is what I've noticed. Finally, less of a power line that we've trellised on and more of a tactic that the WAC program has taken has been to offer individual consulting to staff, faculty, and administrators on their own writing projects. This has emerged in fits and starts over the past 4 years, but it has gotten the attention of highly placed positions in the college. The WAC program has been involved in working with the college's legal counsel more than once, the policy office, the Equal Employment Opportunity Office, and the entire People and Wellness Culture work area, which houses all of human resources and staff and faculty development. These opportunities have gotten the name of the WAC program into these rarely reached yet very powerful locations at the college. The administrators in these areas then talk to other administrators about the usefulness of our consulting and feedback, which raises our credibility and status and assets that we bring to the entire writing culture of the college. So over the last, I would say 3 years, I think that most everybody up in upper administration is aware, and this is across not just academic administration, but business administration, institutional assessment, institutional advancement, all of the many different vice presidencies that we have. They all know WAC, and they all know WAC because they talk to each other. And we've established ourselves as a resource that anybody can turn to, anybody in the college can turn to for help without feeling embarrassed or without feeling like they're going to be judged. In our original research, when we were trying to understand the writing culture at the college, one of the main findings that we had was that everybody felt fearful about their own writing. Not everybody, but I would say 99% of people felt fearful of their writing, including upper administrators, staff members, faculty. And so we've really attempted to get that conversation out there so that being insecure or vulnerable with your own writing is seen as a norm of the culture of writing at our college rather than something to be ashamed of. So how does this all come back to student writing and success? As all WAC programs need to, otherwise they will not get funding. So the WAC program now has a leadership role in the college. We are solicited for advice, programming, consulting, and support across all areas of writers, so students, staff, faculty, and administrators. This has given us the credibility to move forward recently, in the last 2 years, with a meaningful writing intensive designation. And what I mean by meaningful is that it is based on pedagogy and not just page count. And it also carries with it a faculty load benefit and a reduced course cap. This is huge in a 2-year college setting. And it makes it possible for 2-year college faculty to incorporate writing intensive pedagogies into their teaching. Because of the load agreement and the financial tab that goes with that, this had to make its way through the faculty senate, our executive cabinet, our president, and all of our vice presidents, and also our board of trustees. This was no small feat, and it took 2 years. But I believe that we were successful because we had established credible relationships across the college and not just in one specific area. And we showed our relevance to all areas across the college, all stakeholders across the college. We also have solid working partnerships with the staff development and faculty development programs and e-learning. All of these promote our workshops and our online self-paced courses at the top of their offerings each semester. And so this area of teaching support, which tends to be the starting point for many WAC developments, this is now becoming our ending point. Not that we're ending, but this is what we were reaching towards. But we didn't start here. We started in all these other places, and we built up the credibility that now we can do this teaching support. I don't think we necessarily feel threatening or feel like we're not, that we're sort of bringing in like a missionary status to trying to get faculty to do things that we think are good for them, but rather it's grown out of our relationship with faculty. So in through here, we do all kinds of consultations on teaching. We have some self-paced Canvas courses that are based in equity, inclusivity, and diversity, and also just some basic developing successful student writers and readers, self-paced courses. We have a number of workshops. We have transparent assignment templates and transparent assignment initiatives. And then we also have learning communities that we run with faculty. So this piece here looks like a pretty traditional WAC program now, but it grew out of all of this out here. And I don't think that it would have happened that way otherwise at the community college. Additionally, academic administrators from across the entire academic arm of the college, they now turn to WAC for questions on student writing, teaching strategies, and their own faculty and staff writing needs. So they are now reaching out to us rather than us reaching out to them. Although one caveat to that is with the writing intensive program, I am still needing to be a bit of a missionary with this because it launched right before COVID shut everything down. We have a fairly solid starting cohort of writing intensive sections and teachers, but I believe there's a lot of teachers out there who are already doing writing intensive pedagogies and are not aware of it, and they're not reaping the benefits. So now that we'll be able to get back onto campus, and I'll be able to meet with people face to face, and they may not be completely and totally overwhelmed, I'm hoping that this section will grow much further in the next couple of years. So WAC has established itself as primarily a compassionate and capable program that can respond to the writing needs of anyone in the SLCC community of writers. We've done this by not deciding ahead of time what WAC would exactly be at the college, and by creating programs in collaboration with institutional power lines that already existed or that had significant institutional prioritization. This may not work at every 2-year college, but with the affordances that we had, I was an experienced and seasoned director and a professor at the college, it can be worth it to broaden the scope of what WAC can become. Here's my contact information. I'd be happy to talk with anybody after the end of this video. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to work out, but I believe I'm going to be here live for a Q&A. And if that doesn't work for you, please feel free to reach out anytime, and I'd be happy to chat. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kelly Shea. I'm an associate professor of English and director of first year writing at Seton Hall University. And I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Ed Jones, who's director of basic skills and assessment at Seton Hall also. And we're here to talk to you about our endeavors to get WAC and WID going at Seton Hall. I'm going to give an overview of the history and the project itself, and then Ed will follow with some more detailed information on some of the outcomes and other information that we gleaned from our project. So our talk is called Stealth WAC or Stealth Assessment, when it looks like assessment when it's really WAC, and vice versa, and with a little faculty development thrown in. Before I start, I would also like to add a land acknowledgement to our presentation in the spirit of what Colorado State has done on the website, and to acknowledge that we are all sitting on land that was not originally our land. And so I wanted to make sure that I made that acknowledgement. So here we go. We have been here before for the last 15 plus years at WAC conferences and beyond. My colleagues and I have worked to frame and reframe our university's attempts at getting a solid WAC initiative underway. I'm also just going to quickly share my screen with you all. All right. At Seton Hall University, we have held informal workshops, technology-funded formal workshops, in-person faculty training, Blackboard-module-based faculty training, core-connected faculty development, and we've undertaken various stabs at assessing this work, from department-based assessment to program assessment to university-wide assessment. Yet nothing has stuck. It has been nearly impossible to develop and maintain a program due to administrative roadblocks, skepticism, and lack of funding. Ours is a classic case of multiple, well-intentioned but frustrated WAC program design and leadership problems. Despite our best research and passionate ideas, we just can't seem to develop a sustainable project. We also know that this is not a news story, and yet we persist. So in the category of new news, another colleague, Ed, and I have tried again to get a formalized WAC or WID program going. In 2017, 2018, about 4 years after a prior assessment project, we received funding from the Center for Faculty Development to set up a WAC working group, which researched, studied, and designed a potential WAC program. Note that the director of the Center for Faculty Development is from the English department and had been involved in the early workshops. Her name is Mary Balkin. For members of the WAC working group, we looked across the university to faculty who were supportive of writing and who represented as many colleges as possible. We developed a proposal for setting up a WAC program, including faculty trainers, student mentors, workshops, and resources, but it was rejected by an interim provost who has left the position only about a year ago. At that time, though, we had another idea. We were still not giving up. We had been involved in an attempt by the core curriculum program to assess the 5 core proficiencies at our institution: reading and writing, critical thinking, oral communication, information fluency, which is research, and numeracy. The first, of course, was one of our institutional WAC-type successes. As part of the core, students are required to take a certain number of courses that are infused with reading and writing, so this is a kind of a silent WID program. In an effort to assess the core proficiencies, we were asked by the interim provost to undertake an assessment that was not particularly useful. It involved having students take reading and writing assessments based on a summer reading that ultimately not all students had even read. It was poorly designed and did not produce good results, only partly because the response rate was almost non-existent. But we saw this assessment fail as our chance to bring WAC and WID principles into core proficiency assessment, which was clearly something in which the administration was interested. As Charles Bazerman et al. Described, these principles include encouraging writing outside of the composition program, specifically studying writing that occurs, quotes, in university subject matter classes other than those offered by comp or writing programs, systematic encouragement, institutional support, and educational knowledge, all to increase the amount and quality of writing occurring in such courses as history, science, mathematics, and sociology, end quote, among many others. WID specifically focuses on the kinds of writing that actually occur in the disciplines without regard to the standard literary models. We developed a proposal for reading and writing assessment that looked at 3 courses that all SHU students had to take. They reside in the core curriculum program that also administers the core proficiencies. You can see these courses listed on this slide. Why not, we thought, assess reading and writing and critical thinking within these 3 interdisciplinary courses, which students take in their first, second, and third and fourth years. What we designed ultimately was a phased program that in 2018-2019 first asked a pilot group of faculty to undertake a form of curricular assessment. They looked at the common syllabus of the freshman course, their section-specific syllabi, and the reading and writing and critical thinking assignments to see if the materials were set up to help students achieve certain skills. The list of these skills was developed by the pilot faculty with input from prior rubrics that had been developed by the core curriculum assessment teams to assess reading and writing and critical thinking artifacts. During the conversations that served to develop this list for our current purposes, the pilot faculty shared and assessed course materials that they used to discover and hone the skills on the list. After the pilot group assessed their own materials and developed a new rubric, we assessed essays that were written by all students at the end of the semester, a common final exam that had been written by the program director with input from faculty. Ed will speak about the result of these assessments. In some ways, though, it's not the results of the assessment per se that were most significant, although those results were thought-provoking and discussion-inducing. What was perhaps most intriguing is that a group of faculty members in a discussion-based faculty development type of setting looked at their syllabi and assignments, made changes based on guidelines, which they should have been following all along, but they had not been looked at in a while, and then suggested adjustment to the program's final exam, as well as buying into an assessment project that considered not only how well the students could read, write, and think, but also how well the coursework helped the students learn how to better read, write, and think. The next phase, which took place in 2019-2020, was to share these results and bring additional faculty from this course program into the fold to see what other ideas might bubble up. Then, too, we began to work with a new group of faculty, new pilot group of faculty who teach the sophomore course, and we proceeded similarly with that group. Ed will discuss this work as well. Finally, in 2020-2021, we endeavored to work with the most difficult aspect of the program, the Core 3 courses. These are called Engaging the World courses, and they reside in various departments. There is no common syllabus, but they do share a common goal of helping students to engage the ideas they encountered in Core 1 and Core 2 from a disciplinary and a more global perspective. There are no common assignments and no common final exam. However, after lengthy consultations with the Core 3 coordinator, we did encourage and participate in 2 Teams-based discussions with Core 3 faculty. This was Teams, which is our version of Zoom. And a surprising number of faculty participated over the 2 sessions. We discussed the goals of these courses and how we might assess the expected outcomes, including possibly coming up with a common assignment across all courses. This faculty was particularly appreciative of the opportunity to talk with each other about this part of the core curriculum. They hadn't had the opportunity to do that ever. As one colleague pointed out, I'm really glad I went to the session. There's lots of good Core 3 teaching going on, and it was good to be together with other faculty. Another one said, what a great session. It was really useful in terms of further developing some topics in my own course. And finally, another faculty made a practical suggestion that will turn into a session at our annual student academic exposition. He said, it occurred to me that it would be good to have a bibliography of faculty and student research arising from or inspired by Core 3. I have begun with the papers I have co-authored, but I know there must be more. Additionally, the faculty suggested that we administer a brief survey on the efficacy of the core, the entire core, to those students leaving it, so to speak, in this last Core 3 class. This survey was sent out to the Core 3 faculty who were in turn asked to share it with their students. We do not have the results of that survey. This WAC in Assessments Clothing or Assessment in WAC's Clothing project has had intriguing effects. The faculty are working together to, at their teaching to ensure that the students have the opportunities to meet the desired outcomes. They're discussing and creating assignments and classroom activities that help students read, write, and think more critically. The proof will be in the student artifacts, of course, but the first 2 pilot groups assessments resulted in suggested changes to the final exam prompts. That work involved working with both core course directors to look at prompt wording and order of operations so that the exam would help students produce what the faculty was hoping to see in terms of textual understanding, course idea synthesis, and analysis of texts and ideas. Additionally, the faculty came to believe that students would produce better essays if the final exam was given as a take-home rather than as an in-class final. Of course, as Comp and WAC folks, we were thrilled with these changes, but they would have only occurred with the kind of ongoing conversations with the faculty that took place. Here, remarkably, is where faculty development meets assessment, meets WAC, meets curricular change. We might even get a WAC coordinator out of the deal. We have had only informal but very positive feedback from the faculty, some of which I've shared already. Several have commented on how enjoyable and effective faculty development sessions have been. One faculty member emailed us, and this was in the first group, the first pilot. Thank you very much for the proficiencies workshop you hosted today. I appreciate the time, thought, planning, hard work, and dedication to students and faculty so evident behind it. The book by Bean, we had given everybody engaging ideas, also seems rather good and will prove most useful in many of our upcoming assessment endeavors. It was also fun to exchange ideas and inspirations and make new acquaintances in this forum. Another faculty member, who is the coordinator of the sophomore course, noted how easy assessment seemed in this informal setting. He pointed out if assessment was this clearly focused on simply improving course assignments and outcomes, more faculty would be on board. Whatever has happened here, humanities faculty interested in and even engaged in collaborative assessment, funding by the provost's office, what might have happened is that we have been moving within Chris Anson's levels of inquiry continuum, with a little bit of serendipity thrown in for good measure. It is possible, as Anson described, the generally informal investigations and experiments that we started with have given way to more systematic and change-yielding processes known as action research. He quotes Kemmis and McTaggart to describe action research as a form of collective, self-reflective inquiry undertaken by participants in social situations in order to improve the rationality and justice of their own social or education practices, as well as their understanding of those practices and the situations in which the practices are carried out. Is this action research? Is this WAC? Is this assessment? Is this faculty development? Time will tell, but so far it seems to be a little bit of all of the above. All right, and that concludes my remarks. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to ask Ed to unmute and to open up his own video. And then he's going to go into a PowerPoint with some detail on this overview that I've provided. Ed.
Okay, well, I think I should probably say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. I'm glad to be with you to share some of the work that we've done. My job is to paint a little bit more of a little bit more detailed version of what Kelly outlined in her talk. So I'm going to pull up, I hope, my PowerPoint. And let's see. There we go. All right. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. There we go. All right. So I wanted to talk first about this pilot group that we worked with first, and it really does a great job of illustrating how completely collaborative the process was. Because this group that we managed to get, largely because we had a good relationship both with the core director and with the director of this particular course, the Core 1 course, and he was able to get some volunteers who were all quite enthusiastic. And that allowed us to create a set of proficiency criteria that we would use to assess not only Core 1, but Core 2 and potentially Core 3. The very first meeting, though, was one of the most productive ones in ways that we weren't sure we would see. Kelly guided them through a sort of a self-check for each of the members' course syllabi to make sure that it corresponded with the requirements listed in the core curriculum. Just as an example, one of the faculty members discovered rather quickly that his 12-page research paper, the only writing assignment, major writing assignment, did not qualify for the kind of work that we were doing with freshmen in helping them learn how to read and write. After we developed the criteria, which were based upon initial documents in creating the core, but then had to be refined in relationship to what these courses could actually test. For example, they couldn't evaluate core criteria like numeracy or oral communication, and only part of the research criteria. So after we did that, then there was time for students to pull out their specific writing assignments, modifying and sharing them, and then finally scoring their final exams as a group project. Finally, in the last meeting, we made plans to roll out the WAC work for all the Core 1 faculty. Again, we wanted to make sure that the methods and the strategies we were going to use would be ones that would be seen by this pilot group as productive and collegial. So we met with the entire Core 1 faculty in the fall of 2019. As Kelly suggested, we did the review of the syllabi. We reviewed the proficiency criteria that the pilot group had come up with. And then what was new this time around is we actually had the findings from the pilot assessment. And I'll share those with you in a moment. What we were able to do after that is have a more focused conversation on assignments, because they were able to see the kinds of skills that students were weak in and strong in, and use them to focus on gathering, collecting, and sharing writing assignments and in-class assignments that would be useful specifically to focus on those weaker criteria, those weaker skill areas. And they did this in groups of 2 or 3 to look at their major paper assignments and in relationship to the proficiency rubric. So I think at this point, I can shift over to share with you the proficiency criteria that we developed as a group. You'll notice that there's 13 of them. Assessment is not usually done with 13 criteria. It's very, very difficult to do any kind of norming and have some kind of really reliable kind of scoring. However, we thought that it was important to give everyone a general sense of which criteria the students seemed to be meeting or not meeting. And we felt that having a large, we had a large body of essays that the faculty scored. We had some norming, and we felt that this would give us a reasonable, would lead to conclusions that we could at least reasonably accept. So as you can see, the yellow highlighted items, following academic guidelines and writing with correctness and clarity, these were rated quite strong. These are scores out of a 3. On the other hand, The blue highlighted ones at the bottom, sound reasoning, close reading, and self-critique, were really quite weak, not even measuring up to barely proficient. In particular, it's interesting to notice that self-critique scored particularly low, and we quickly realized that there was nothing either implicitly or explicitly in the final exam question that would really allow students or promote the kind of thinking that would allow us, that would let us evaluate self-critique. As a result of the discussions that we had about the final exam after looking at the criteria, we were able to pinpoint specific areas that needed to be changed. They all had to do with how well the final exam prompt aligned with the actual proficiency goals. So, for example, just one case here, making explicit the expectation that students will synthesize sources to answer the exam question. That it wasn't explicit, and as a result, what we saw in the student exams is paragraphs where the student would use one source to address the question they were answering, and then they would use in another paragraph, they would use a second source, and the same with the third one, but these sources were not integrated, they were not synthesized, so they weren't able to use sources to question, build upon their ideas. So that was one specific change that came out of it. Another one was making explicit the expectation of developing a thesis through identifying a question or a problem or an issue, not simply affirming the topic. High school students are very good at writing a 5-paragraph theme, which basically proclaims a thesis, but doesn't contextualize it in a way that engages the reader. Moving on to Core 2. Here we had the same process, but it went more smoothly and we had some more confidence also because of the work we'd done with Core 1. Again, the same process happened. We worked with a pilot group of Core 2 faculty in the fall semester, and that core group then was able to, they supplied the final exams then, and we could score them so that in the following spring, 2020, we had the results of some Core 2 assessment to share with the faculty. In the spring then, we did the traditional sharing of syllabus, but we were also able to share the results of the pilot group at the second meeting, and as usual, final exam discussion of assignments, working in small groups. Finally, there was a chance to work with the final exam and to think about how it might be revised to address some of the issues we saw from the assessments. This is just to give you an example of the type of assignment that the faculty would share. So in this particular case, you can see it starts, this is just a lesson plan for a day. It starts with the question, what is love? And they answer that in 5 minutes. And then at the end, they revisit their statement about love that they had written at the beginning of class. In between, the instructor asks them about their reading process, and they share ways in which their reading was frustrated or what helped in their reading. Then the instructor went on to model a reading strategy that identified the differences between literal meaning, interpretation, and evaluation, and how one can lead to the other. Finally, they applied that model in doing some small group work with a reading on Socrates. So moving forward, lots of challenges and opportunities await. Kelly mentioned that Core 3 work is underway. two big things that, big challenges that lie in our future is being able to score the essays with greater reliability. Otherwise, we won't be able to tell whether progress is being made between core 1 and core 2, between core 2 and core 3. There are tools that we've begun to use, developing anchor essays for the different levels, developing language for each proficiency level, and doing more norming. Finally, we're going to need to do, and we actually have begun doing, some work to overcome serious budget constraints. There's always been a budget for evaluating content. A group of faculty would get together and score the essays for that. But there was no norming in those cases. It was hard to, in fact, the scoring wasn't very reliable. Now, though, the same budget has to accommodate the content scoring, but also the proficiency scoring, because our budget was just for a couple of years. There had to be an ongoing budget. So we did some pretty serious cutting of the number of criteria we were going to look at, and we figured out a way of making the exam serve both purposes of evaluating content and proficiencies. We'll see how that works out. We did it last fall and have some initial results. We haven't yet shared them with faculty. So to summarize, these are the three big takeaways for us. The importance of working collaboratively from the very beginning, creating an assessment instrument together and interpreting it together, as well as closing the loop by developing assignments that would help address the weaknesses. Second, making assessment results be a catalyst for change. It was really cool to see the faculty look at the results and be motivated to say, oh, wow, yeah, that's true. I have felt that close reading is a problem. Let's work together to focus on that. And then finally, to find creative ways to leverage already existing budgetary resources, an ongoing challenge. So Kelly, that finishes it for me, and I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, great. If you could just unshare your screen, and then I will just put one quick slide up there as we conclude. And let me just go to this slide real quickly. And just to say thank you very much for watching our recording. We will be live in the Q&A and look forward to your questions at that time. I would also just like to thank Ed very much for his participation. Ed is retiring, or has retired, and was willing to come on and do this final conference presentation. And I really appreciate that. And we wish him all the best. And we hope to see you in the Q&A.
Glad to help out, Kelly.
Thank you all so much, and have a good conference. Bye-bye.